Russian forces advanced on Pokrovsk, believing they were breaking Ukraine's last defensive line in the Donetsk region. They weren't. What waited ahead wasn't a wall. It was a trap. Ukraine's commanders had studied every road, every intersection, every rise in the terrain. They knew the Russians would come in mass, pushing fast to overwhelm. Instead of meeting that force head-on, Ukraine shaped the battlefield around them. Bridges were pre-wired, flanks mined, and escape routes calculated to the meter. Drones flew constant patterns over the approach roads, feeding a real-time picture into artillery command centers miles away. Every movement on the map had a response waiting for it. When the first Russian convoys entered the outskirts, Ukrainian units began a tactical withdrawal, pulling back not in panic but by design. Columns moved deeper, chasing an illusion of victory. Behind them, engineers blew crossings and cratered roads, sealing the corridor they had just driven through. Within hours, what had looked like progress became entrapment. Artillery batteries opened in layered fire missions. FPV drones hunted stragglers trying to reverse out. Fuel trucks ignited, the sky filled with smoke and circling drones. Communications faltered. Russian radio nets buzzed with requests for ammunition and coordinates that no longer existed. The defenders controlled the tempo. Attack, isolate, destroy. Pokrovsk's skyline, silos, rail yards, half-collapsed apartment blocks became landmarks in a grid of death. By nightfall, the spearhead was out of fuel and cut from its own rear echelons. By the second day, the Russian advance had lost its rhythm. What began as coordinated pushes from three directions, east, southeast, and south, had fractured into isolated fights for survival. Each battalion believed it was still part of a larger offensive. But drone reconnaissance showed the truth. Every axis of advance had been severed. Every corridor now covered by Ukrainian artillery. The Azov Corps, together with mechanized brigades from the 47th and 93rd, executed what they called elastic defense. Instead of clinging to static lines, they yielded ground and controlled increments, trading meters for minutes. Those minutes bought them intelligence. UAVs marked convoys, artillery corrected in real time, and entire columns vanished beneath overlapping barrages. When Russian units attempted to regroup, loitering munitions hovered above crossroads, diving whenever a command vehicle's antenna betrayed movement. By dusk, Pokrovsk's southern industrial zone burned like a forge. Satellite images later showed hundreds of craters aligned in perfect arcs, the result of pre-registered fire missions designed days before the offensive even began. Russian supply routes behind the front were now blocked by destroyed bridges and cratered highways. Engineers tried to build pontoon crossings under the cover of darkness, but thermal drones picked them up instantly. Within minutes, artillery turned the riverbanks into rolling walls of flame. Morale collapsed faster than logistics. Radio intercepts captured panicked requests for evacuation and ammunition drops. Commanders on the ground reported no stable communication, no resupply, no retreat. Ukrainian counter-battery teams exploited that chaos, striking any signal trace that appeared for more than 10 seconds. The trapped units were now boxed in by precision, not by coincidence. By the third day, the battlefield around Pokrovsk had hardened into a deadly geometry. The Russian spearheads that once stretched toward the city were now stranded inside a basin of their own making. Each exit road, north toward Mirnorod, west toward Kostiantynivka, was under continuous observation. Drones flew figure-8 patterns above the terrain, marking any movement larger than a motorcycle. Ukrainian artillery units rotated fire positions every 2 hours, keeping pressure constant and unpredictable. Inside the encirclement, fuel was gone. Soldiers siphoned from wrecked vehicles. Medical evacuation was nearly impossible. Attempts to call in air support failed as Ukrainian electronic warfare units jammed communications across the sector. The Russians tried to force a breakout at night, columns of infantry supported by remaining armored vehicles. But the fields outside Pokrovsk were already mapped by thermal drones. Each flare of an engine or spark from a track drew instant fire. The breakout dissolved into darkness and smoke. Ukrainian commanders kept the noose tight but calculated. The goal wasn't reckless assault, it was exhaustion. They used layered fires, mortars at short range, tube artillery for area denial, and HIMARS for deep interdiction. Every shot followed verified coordinates. Every explosion served a purpose. By the 5th day, analysts reported that Russian forces trapped near Doropilya and Ivanivka had lost operational coherence. Platoons scattered, officers dead or out of contact, rations dwindling. Those who survived faced a stark choice: surrender or die in place. In Kiev, the General Staff confirmed limited counterattacks along the flanks, reclaiming villages and clearing 160 square kilometers of territory. On social channels, footage emerged. Drone views of abandoned armor, trenches littered with spent cartridges, and soldiers waving improvised white cloths. The Pokrovsk offensive, meant to be Moscow's decisive thrust of the season, had turned into a costly disaster. When the smoke finally thinned over Pokrovsk, the scale of the defeat came into focus. Satellite images showed wrecked armor scattered across open fields like iron fossils. The main highway resembled a burn scar, the path of an army that had moved faster than its supply and died for it. Russian forces that survived the encirclement withdrew east in fragments, abandoning ammunition, vehicles, and even wounded men. What Moscow had called a major advance now existed only as coordinates on a casualty map. For Ukraine, Pokrovsk was more than a tactical win. It was proof that intelligence, speed, and precision could neutralize mass. The operation showcased a new kind of warfare: decentralized, sensor-driven, algorithmically precise. Drones fed constant eyes. Artillery answered with seconds of delay, not minutes. The battlefield was no longer decided by who had more guns, but by who saw and acted first. Military analysts described Pokrovsk as a turning point, the moment Ukraine transitioned fully into modern networked war. Still, the victory came at a cost. Entire districts of the city lay in ruins. Civilians who had endured months of bombardment emerged to streets lined with destroyed vehicles and unexploded ordnance. Power lines sagged over shattered rail yards, and the air stank of oil and ash. Engineers and sappers moved through the wreckage, clearing mines so humanitarian convoys could enter. For them, the battle wasn't over. It had simply changed its form. In the weeks that followed, Russia redeployed battered units farther south, trying to rebuild an offensive line. But the damage was systemic. Logistics chains were overstretched, morale low, and command cohesion shaken. Ukraine's success in Pokrovsk rippled outward, forcing the enemy to slow, disperse, and rethink. What began as a local defense had reshaped the operational tempo of the entire Donetsk front. In the final days after Pokrovsk, the battlefield fell silent except for the hum of drones mapping the aftermath. What had begun as a Russian offensive had ended as a study in operational collapse. The numbers told the story. Over 100,000 troops committed, tens of kilometers gained, and then lost, not to brute force, but to precision and patience. Ukraine had turned speed against its attacker, weaponized intelligence, and reclaimed ground without wasting lives in futile frontal assaults. By mid-October, the lines stabilized, but the lesson remained carved into every crater and burnt-out vehicle. In modern war, dominance belongs not to the side with more soldiers, but to the one that controls time. The seconds between detection and strike. Pokrovsk became that proof, a demonstration of what a smaller, smarter, faster force could achieve against overwhelming mass. The city's ruins became symbols not of destruction, but of tactical evolution.